I'm Amelia Morgan, 30 years old, and until this Christmas, the designated financial savior of my family. For 7 years, I paid their debts, funded their dreams, and asked for nothing in return. Then came that Christmas morning when my sister Stephanie announced with a cold smile, we had a family vote. Amelia is no longer our sister. The shock froze my breath, but I was prepared. Their laughter died instantly when I placed the red folder beneath our Christmas tree. If you've ever been betrayed by those you loved most, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're ready to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of manipulation. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I never imagined my family would someday see me as nothing more than a walking ATM. We lived in a modest 2-story house with a small backyard where we'd have summer barbecues. Dad worked as an engineer while Mom taught at the local elementary school. Stephanie was always the pretty, popular one, 3 years younger than me with our mother's charisma and charm. Drew, the baby of the family at 5 years my junior, was the typical coddled youngest child, athletic but unmotivated, always expecting things to work out with minimal effort. Everything changed when I was 16. Dad announced he was leaving, having fallen in love with his administrative assistant. The divorce was messy, bitter, and financially devastating. Dad moved across the country to California with his new girlfriend, and while he sent the required child support payments, they barely covered the basics. Mom struggled to maintain our lifestyle on a teacher's salary. "We have to stick together now," Mom would say, squeezing my hand. "Family is all we have." Those words would become the chains that bound me to them for years to come. Mom changed after the divorce. The warm, nurturing teacher transformed into someone brittle and calculating. She married Jack Thompson just 2 years later, a quiet, passive man who worked in insurance and seemed to have no opinions of his own. He moved into our house and generally stayed out of family matters, nodding along with whatever Mom decided. "Jack's a provider," Mom explained when I questioned why she'd married someone she didn't seem to particularly love. "We need stability, Amelia. You'll understand when you're older." While my siblings floundered after the divorce, I channeled my pain into achievement. I studied obsessively, joined every academic club available, and secured a full scholarship to Boston University's business program. My family attended my high school graduation, clapping politely as I gave the valedictorian speech. "We're so proud," Mom said at the small celebration afterward. "You've always been the smart one." There was something in her tone that day, a speculative quality that I didn't recognize until years later. It was the sound of someone assessing an asset. College was a blur of classes, part-time jobs, and internships. I lived in a cramped dormitory while Stephanie decided on a whim to attend a private liberal arts college, requiring Mom and Jack to take out substantial loans. Drew barely finished high school, bouncing between retail jobs and vague ambitions of starting something in tech. My hard work paid off when I landed an internship at a prestigious financial firm during my junior year, which led to a full-time job offer upon graduation. I started at $75,000 annually, more money than I'd ever imagined earning at 22. The first request came just 3 weeks after I started my job. Mom called, her voice tight with worry. "Stephanie's car broke down completely. The mechanic says it'll cost $2,800 to fix, and with her tuition payments this month." She let the sentence hang in the air. I transferred the money that night. Stephanie sent a quick text, "Thanks, sis. Lifesaver." Face-blowing kiss. I didn't hear from her again for weeks. 2 months later, Drew needed $1,500 for a coding bootcamp that would totally set him up for success. Mom needed help with property taxes. Jack's hours got cut. Each request was accompanied by promises of repayment that never materialized. The pattern established itself so gradually I barely noticed. Family dinners became opportunities to mention financial difficulties within my earshot. Phone calls from home became rare unless they preceded a request for money. My achievements at work were celebrated primarily for what they might mean for my increasing salary. The first major crisis came when I was 24. I'd received a promotion and a substantial raise when Mom called in tears. "They're going to foreclose on the house, Amelia. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. Jack's company is downsizing, and with Stephanie's graduate school tuition." She broke down sobbing. I emptied my savings account, $22,000 I'd been setting aside for a down payment on my own place, and transferred it to her. When I visited the following weekend, there was a new living room set and a high-end entertainment system in the house. "We got such incredible deals," Mom explained when she caught me staring. "Once-in-a-lifetime clearance prices." And after all the stress of almost losing our home, we needed something to lift our spirits. That night, I overheard Stephanie talking to her friend on the phone about their upcoming spring break trip to Cancun. "Mom and Jack totally hooked me up," she laughed. "They said with everything I'm going through with grad school stress, I deserved a break." I said nothing. The pattern was set. I was the provider, the safety net, the responsible one who would always be there to fix their problems. And they were the deserving ones, entitled to whatever comforts and luxuries they desired, regardless of financial reality. "Blood is thicker than water," Mom would remind me whenever I hesitated about a financial request. "We're family. We're all we've got." By my 25th birthday, I realized I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years because every spare dollar went to someone else's emergency. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment while funding Stephanie's graduate studies and Drew's latest business idea, a social media app that never made it past the planning stage. I was building their dreams while putting mine on indefinite hold. But still, I told myself they were family. And family comes first. As my career advanced, so did my family's financial demands. By 26, I'd been promoted to senior financial analyst with a salary of $98,000, but I had less disposable income than when I'd started as an entry-level employee. The requests had evolved from occasional emergencies to regular expectations. The September after my promotion, Mom called with a familiar tension in her voice. "I've gotten myself into a bit of trouble with the credit cards," she confessed. "I didn't want to worry you, but it's gotten out of hand." "How much, Mom?" I asked, already opening my banking app. $15,000, she whispered. "The interest is killing me, Amelia. I can't sleep at night." I transferred the money immediately, along with a spreadsheet I'd created to help her budget moving forward. She thanked me profusely, promising to be more careful. 2 months later, I noticed she'd posted photos of a newly renovated kitchen on social media. When I asked about it during Sunday dinner, Jack mumbled something about necessary repairs, while Mom quickly changed the subject. Drew's financial crisis came next. At 27, he'd finally found his true calling, a subscription box service for craft beer enthusiasts. He needed $20,000 for initial inventory and website development. "This is different from my other ideas, Ames," he insisted, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. "I've done the research. These subscription services are booming right now. Do you have a business plan?" I asked. "Financial projections? Marketing strategy?" He slid a few crumpled papers across the table, vague outlines and optimistic sales forecasts with no real data behind them. Despite my reservations, I wrote him a check, drawing from my 401k and paying the early withdrawal penalty. "It's a loan," I said firmly. "With interest. I need to see monthly payments starting in 6 months." "Absolutely," Drew agreed, his relief palpable. "You're the best, sis. I won't let you down this time." 6 months came and went with no payment. When I brought it up, Drew became defensive. "Business takes time to grow, Amelia." "God, not everything is about spreadsheets and ROI. Some of us are trying to build something meaningful." His beer subscription service quietly folded 8 months later. The $20,000 was never mentioned again. Then came Stephanie's wedding. She'd met Gregory, a pharmaceutical sales rep, during her final year of graduate school. After a whirlwind 6-month romance, they were engaged. Stephanie had visions of a fairy tale ceremony at the Langham Hotel in Boston, with no expense spared. "We've already put deposits down on everything," Mom explained when she invited me to lunch. "The venue, the caterer, the band. But Greg's parents can only contribute so much, and with our financial situation." "How much?" I asked, my voice flat. Mom slid an itemized budget across the table. The total at the bottom, $35,000. "I know it's a lot," Mom said quickly, "but this is Stephanie's special day. She's always dreamed of a beautiful wedding." I stared at the list. $10,000 for flowers alone. Custom-designed invitations. A designer dress being flown in from Paris. "What about my special days, Mom?" I asked quietly. "What about my dreams?" Her expression hardened momentarily before softening into practiced concern. "Oh, honey, you'll have your turn. But you've always been so independent, so career-focused. Stephanie needs this. You know how important appearances are to her." I signed the check. At Stephanie's wedding, I sat at a table with distant cousins while Mom, Jack, and Drew were seated at the head table with the bride and groom. During her speech, Stephanie thanked her parents for making this day possible and her new in-laws for their generous contribution. My name wasn't mentioned. That night, I started the red folder, a simple cardboard file where I documented every loan, every gift, every financial contribution I'd made to my family over the years. Each entry included the date, amount, stated purpose, and any promises of repayment. The total made me physically ill, $127,000 in just 4 years, not including smaller gifts and regular help with monthly expenses. By my 29th birthday, the mortgage payments had become my responsibility too. Jack had been laid off again, though I'd begun to suspect he simply wasn't looking for work very hard. Mom had reduced her teaching hours to part-time, citing stress and fatigue. Drew had moved back home after his failed business venture and contributed nothing to household expenses. Stephanie and Greg bought a beautiful colonial in a prestigious neighborhood, somehow affording a lifestyle that should have been well beyond their means. I attempted to establish boundaries during a family dinner in April. "I need to start prioritizing my own financial future," I explained carefully. "I'm happy to help in emergencies, but I can't continue to be the primary support for everyone." The reaction was immediate and vicious. "After everything we've done for you," Mom said, her voice quivering with manufactured emotion. "I raised you alone after your father abandoned us. I sacrificed everything so you could succeed. We're family," Drew added. "You don't turn your back on family." "It's not like you have other expenses," Stephanie pointed out with casual cruelty. "No husband, no kids, not even a pet. What else would you spend your money on?" I left that night with a migraine and another withdrawal from my account. $3,000 for property taxes they'd forgotten were due. The red folder grew thicker. 3 months later, I received another promotion. Senior investment advisor with a salary of $135,000 plus performance bonuses. I told no one in my family, but somehow they knew. The requests increased in frequency and amount. The red folder documented it all. The money I'd planned to use for a down payment on a modest condo diverted to bail Drew out of credit card debt. The European vacation I'd been saving for since college canceled to pay for Mom and Jack's roof repair. The professional development courses I wanted to take postponed indefinitely because Stephanie needed help with medical bills after her cosmetic surgery. 7 years of putting everyone else first had left me with an impressive salary on paper and almost nothing to show for it. No property, minimal savings, a retirement account that had been depleted multiple times. But more than the financial cost was the emotional one, the growing realization that the people I sacrificed everything for saw me as nothing more than a convenient resource to be exploited. The red folder became my silent testament to years of financial abuse disguised as family obligation. And as the resentment grew, So did my determination that something would eventually have to change. The moment everything changed happened on an ordinary Sunday in September, 3 months before Christmas. I'd arrived early for our monthly family dinner, letting myself in with the key Mom had given me for emergencies, which usually meant delivering checks or groceries when needed. The house was quiet as I placed the wine I'd brought on the kitchen counter. Voices drifted from the back patio, Mom, Jack, Stephanie, and Drew enjoying pre-dinner drinks in the late summer sunshine. I moved toward the French doors, then stopped as I heard my name. Amelia's bonus should be coming through next month, Mom was saying. I was thinking we could finally get that vacation property up in Vermont. The one with the lake view. God, she's such an easy mark, Stephanie laughed, the ice cubes clinking in her glass. All you have to do is mention family emergency, and she whips out her checkbook. Remember when she actually made me sign a payment plan for the business loan? Drew chuckled. Like I was ever going to pay that back. What planet is she living on? She's lonely, Mom said matter-of-factly. No social life, no relationship. We're all she has. Of course she'll keep supporting us. It's almost sad, Stephanie added. All that money, and what does she do with it? Lives in that depressing apartment, wears the same boring clothes year after year. To Amelia, Jack said, raising his glass. The gift that keeps on giving. Their laughter floated through the air as I stood frozen, my hand still on the door frame. Something crystallized in that moment, a perfect clarity about what my family truly thought of me. I'd been suspecting it for years, but hearing it stated so baldly, with such casual cruelty, shattered any remaining illusions. I slipped out the front door without announcing myself and sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel. 10 minutes later, I texted Mom that I had a migraine and wouldn't make it to dinner. She responded with a concerned message about taking care of myself and a reminder that Jack needed dental work they couldn't afford. That night, I couldn't sleep. The conversation replayed in my mind on an endless loop. By morning, my hurt had hardened into resolve. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching financial abuse and family estrangement. The stories I read mirrored my own with eerie similarity. The gradual escalation, the emotional manipulation, the shame and isolation. By the end of the week, I had an appointment with both a therapist specializing in family trauma and a lawyer who handled financial recovery cases. The therapist, Dr. Meredith Simmons, listened to my story without judgment. What you're describing is financial exploitation, she said gently. It's a form of abuse, Amelia. The fact that it's family doesn't make it acceptable. The lawyer, Barbara Watkins, was more blunt. You've been functioning as an unauthorized personal bank, she said, reviewing my red folder documentation. These weren't gifts. They were loans obtained under false pretenses with implied promises of repayment. Can I actually recover any of it? I asked. Some, she nodded. Especially the larger amounts where you have documentation. The business loan to your brother, for instance. The wedding funds that were presented as a loan. The mortgage payments you've been making. What about the emotional cost? I asked quietly. Barbara's expression softened. That's harder to quantify legally, but establishing boundaries now will prevent further damage. With professional guidance, I developed a plan. First, I hired a private investigator to document exactly how my financial contributions had been used. The results were worse than I'd imagined. The PI's report revealed that Mom had a gambling problem, regularly visiting Mohegan Sun Casino and losing thousands. The medical emergency money I'd provided last year had funded her 3-day gambling binge. The roof repair I'd paid for had never happened. The money had disappeared into slot machines. Drew had used my business investment to buy a nearly new BMW, which he kept stored at a friend's house to prevent me from seeing it. He'd never even registered the beer subscription business with the state. Most shocking was what Stephanie had done. The medical bills I'd helped with weren't for necessary procedures, but elective cosmetic surgery. Additionally, she and Greg had purchased a vacation property in Maine last year, exactly when they'd told me they were struggling to make mortgage payments on their primary residence. The down payment amount matched precisely what I'd loaned them for their supposed financial emergency. Armed with this information and guided by my legal counsel, I spent October and November preparing. I documented everything in the red folder. Bank transfers, text messages promising repayment, emails detailing the supposed emergencies. I had the PI photographs showing the real use of the money. I gathered legal documents establishing my right to recovery. Most painfully, I made the decision that would change everything. I would confront my family all at once on Christmas Day, when we would all be together. The timing wasn't about vengeance, but practicality. It was the one day I could guarantee everyone's presence without arousing suspicion. As Christmas approached, my family's behavior followed the usual pattern. Mom called with hints about financial struggles during the holiday season. Drew mentioned needing a little help with a new business idea. Stephanie complained about the cost of hosting Christmas dinner at her house. I responded with non-committal sympathy but no offers of money. Their messages became increasingly direct, then desperate, then cold when no funds were forthcoming. 3 days before Christmas, Stephanie called to announce that we've decided Christmas would be at Mom's house instead of hers, and I should bring the ham and wine. I agreed without argument. What they didn't know was that I'd already purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone, the last I would ever give them. I'd written individual letters explaining my feelings and my decision. And I'd prepared the red folder with all its damning contents, ready to be revealed when the moment came. On Christmas Eve, I barely slept. The weight of what I was about to do, confronting the only family I had, potentially losing them forever, pressed on my chest like a physical burden. But underneath the anxiety was a steel thread of determination. 7 years of exploitation was enough. Whatever happened tomorrow, the pattern would end. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight glinting off fresh snow. I dressed carefully in a crimson sweater and charcoal slacks, professional but festive. The carefully wrapped presents filled a shopping bag. The ham and 2 bottles of expensive wine went into another. And the red folder, containing 7 years of financial and emotional manipulation, went into my leather messenger bag. I arrived at Mom's house precisely at 10 a.m. The driveway was already full. Stephanie's Range Rover, Drew's car, not the hidden BMW, but the older Honda he drove to family events, and Jack's sedan. Christmas music drifted from inside, along with the smell of cinnamon and coffee. "She's here," Mom called as I knocked and entered. She embraced me with practiced warmth, her designer perfume enveloping me. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." The house was lavishly decorated. A massive tree draped with expensive ornaments, professional-looking garlands winding up the staircase, multiple poinsettia arrangements. All paid for with my money, I knew. The PI report had included credit card statements showing Mom's $3,200 splurge at high-end decoration stores just weeks after I'd loaned her money for property taxes. "Everything looks beautiful," I said, meaning it. Whatever else was true, my mother had impeccable taste. "Let me help with those bags," Drew offered, unusually solicitous, as he took the wine and ham. He'd been distant for weeks since I'd declined to fund his latest venture. Stephanie emerged from the kitchen, her smile tight. "Merry Christmas," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "Love the sweater. Is it new?" "I've had it for years," I replied, watching her slight grimace at this confirmation of my supposedly depressing wardrobe. Jack nodded from his armchair, already working on what appeared to be his second Bloody Mary of the morning. "Good to see you, Amelia." The atmosphere felt strained beneath the festive veneer. Conversations halted abruptly when I entered rooms. Stephanie and Mom exchanged meaningful glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Drew checked his phone constantly, texting someone with unusual intensity. We gathered for the traditional Christmas breakfast, Mom's special cinnamon rolls, bacon, fruit salad, and mimosas. The conversation remained superficial: weather, holiday traffic, celebrity gossip. No one asked about my work or my life. No one mentioned the financial requests I'd been ignoring for weeks. "These rolls are delicious, Mom," I said, breaking a brief silence. "Your best yet." "Well, I used real Madagascar vanilla this year," she preened. "Makes all the difference." I nodded, remembering the PI report showing her $75 purchase at a specialty baking store the day after I'd declined to help with her supposedly overdue electric bill. After breakfast, we moved to the living room for gifts. This had always been a choreographed affair in our family, with Mom directing who should open what and when. This year, she seemed particularly orchestrated, ensuring certain gifts were opened first. "Stephanie, why don't you give Amelia your gift?" Mom suggested with an odd emphasis. My sister handed me a small, poorly wrapped package. Inside was a coffee mug that read "World's Okayest Sister." Not even a new mug. I could see a faint coffee stain inside. "Cute," I said, setting it aside. Drew gave me a $25 gift card to a bookstore. Mom and Jack's gift was a scarf I recognized from Mom's own closet, still carrying traces of her perfume. When it was my turn, I distributed my carefully chosen gifts. For Drew, a premium leather portfolio embossed with his name, a nod to his frequent claims of entrepreneurial ambitions. For Stephanie, a pair of sapphire earrings that matched her wedding jewelry. For Mom and Jack, a weekend getaway package to a luxury resort they'd mentioned wanting to visit. Their reactions were telling. Surprise, certainly, but also discomfort. No one commented on the thoughtfulness or the obvious expense. Stephanie barely glanced at the earrings before setting them aside. Drew fidgeted with the portfolio, avoiding my eyes. "Well," Mom said after an awkward pause. "That was certainly generous. Especially considering." She glanced at Stephanie, who straightened in her seat. "Actually," my sister said, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality, "we have something important to discuss with you, Amelia." The room went quiet. Drew suddenly became intensely interested in the pattern on the carpet. Jack took a long drink from his glass. "We've been talking as a family," Stephanie continued, gaining confidence. "About our dynamics. About what's healthy and what's not." "Have you?" I asked, my voice calm despite my racing heart. This was it. The moment I'd been both dreading and waiting for. "Yes, and we've made a decision. A family decision." She glanced at Mom, who nodded encouragingly. "We had a vote, actually." "A vote?" I repeated. "Yes, about you, Amelia." Stephanie's voice took on a cruel edge. "We've decided that you're no longer part of this family." The words hung in the air, so shocking in their baldness that for a moment I couldn't process them. "What Stephanie means," Mom interjected, assuming an expression of pained concern, "is that we think there needs to be some separation. Some healthy boundaries." "You've become controlling with your money," Drew added, still not meeting my eyes. "Always holding it over our heads. Making us feel guilty. We need to break this unhealthy dynamic," Stephanie continued. "So we're asking you to leave. Today. And to give us some space to heal as a family." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "This is so hard, sweetheart. But it's for the best. For all of us, including you." I looked around at their faces. Stephanie's barely disguised triumph, Drew's discomfort, Mom's theatrical distress, Jack's alcoholic detachment. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. They hadn't been planning to ask for more money today. They'd been planning to discard me now that I'd stopped providing it. 7 years of financial support, of putting their needs before my own, of sacrificing my dreams for theirs, and this was my reward. Expulsion from the family when I was no longer useful. A strange calm settled over me. I'd expected to feel devastated when this moment came, but instead I felt only a profound sense of clarity. And beneath that, a flicker of something unexpected, relief. Without a word, I reached for my messenger bag and removed the red folder. The glossy cardboard caught the light from the Christmas tree as I placed it deliberately beneath its lowest branches, like a final gift being delivered. "What's that?" Stephanie asked, her confidence wavering slightly. I looked directly at my mother, whose practiced expression of sad concern froze when she met my eyes. Whatever she saw there made her smile vanish completely. "Open it," I said. "I think you'll find it illuminating." The red folder sat beneath the Christmas tree, bright against the scattered wrapping paper and ribbon. No one moved to touch it. "What is this, Amelia?" Mom finally asked, her voice betraying the first hint of genuine emotion I'd heard all day: fear. 7 years of receipts, I replied calmly. Every loan, every gift, every financial emergency. All documented. Drew shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Stephanie's triumphant expression had vanished, replaced by wariness. Jack, suddenly more alert, set down his drink. "This is exactly what I meant about you being controlling with money," Stephanie attempted, though her voice had lost its certainty. "Keeping track of every penny like we're your debtors." "Aren't you, though?" I asked. I reached forward and opened the folder myself, removing the first document, a spreadsheet summarizing all transactions. $253,842. That's the total amount I've provided to this family over 7 years. Mom made a small choking sound. "That's absurd," Drew scoffed, but his face had paled. "You're exaggerating." "Am I?" I withdrew a stack of bank statements, each transfer highlighted in yellow. $20,000 to Drew Morgan on March 15th for a business investment. Business that was never registered with the state. I set down another document. The private investigator's report with photos. "But the BMW you bought a week later is registered in your name." "Nice car. Where do you keep it?" "Still at Jason's house." Drew's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. I turned to Stephanie. $35,000 for your dream wedding. $15,000 for medical emergencies that turned out to be elective cosmetic procedures. I placed photos on the coffee table, snapshots of her vacation property in Maine. "This lovely cabin was purchased last June, exactly 3 days after you told me you might lose your house if I didn't help with the mortgage." Stephanie's face flushed dark red. "You had us investigated? That's insane. That's stalking." "No, Stephanie. That's due diligence. Something I should have practiced years ago." I turned to my mother. "The gambling problem was a surprise, Mom. Mohegan's son must love you. Especially the high-stakes slots." Mom's hand flew to her throat. "How dare you?" "Receipts, Mom. Casino ATM withdrawals. Loyalty program statements. All obtained legally, I assure you." Jack was staring at my mother, genuine shock on his face. "Karen? Gambling? What is she talking about?" The look Mom gave me held real hatred. I turned to Jack. "You didn't know about any of this?" "The money I've been providing wasn't just for household expenses. Last year alone, Mom lost over $40,000 at various casinos." "That's a lie," Mom hissed, but her hands were trembling. I withdrew another document from the folder, a legal letter prepared by my attorney. This outlines the terms for repayment. I've been quite generous with the interest rates and timeline. My lawyer recommended pursuing criminal charges for fraud in some instances, but I've declined that option. "For now." "Lawyer," Drew croaked. "Barbara Watkins. She specializes in financial recovery and family law. She finds my case quite compelling." Stephanie had moved from shock to fury. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Stephanie?" I asked quietly. "Please enlighten me. What have any of you done except take and take and take?" "We're family," Mom snapped, falling back on her most reliable manipulation. "Yes, you made that clear today when you voted me out of it." I reached into the folder again and removed a small digital recorder. "This might interest you." A recording from September 12th of this year. I arrived early for Sunday dinner. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room. God, she's such an easy mark. All you have to do is mention family emergency, and she whips out her checkbook. Remember when she actually made me sign a payment plan for the business loan? Like I was ever going to pay that back. What planet is she living on? She's lonely. No social life, no relationship. We're all she has. Of course she'll keep supporting us. It's almost sad. All that money, and what does she do with it? Lives in that depressing apartment, wears the same boring clothes year after year. To Amelia, the gift that keeps on giving. Their laughter, preserved digitally, echoed in the now silent room. Drew had gone pale. Stephanie sat rigid, her jaw clenched. Mom's face had crumpled into an expression of genuine fear. I wasn't at dinner that night, I said unnecessarily. I heard enough. Jack was looking from Mom to Stephanie to Drew with growing horror. Is this true? All of it. No one answered him. I've spent 7 years believing I was helping my family, I continued, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. 7 years of canceling my plans, delaying my goals, emptying my accounts because you needed me. Because family comes first. I closed the folder gently. What I didn't realize until recently was that I wasn't helping. I was enabling. And you weren't family. You were users. You can't prove any of this, Stephanie said, but her voice wavered. Everything in this folder has been reviewed by my legal team. The loan agreements Drew signed. The texts and emails promising repayment. The documented pattern of financial exploitation. It's all admissible. Drew suddenly stood. Look, Amelia, this is all a misunderstanding. We appreciate everything you've done. We love you. You know that. Do I? I asked. Because 30 minutes ago you were voting me out of the family. That was Stephanie's idea, he said quickly, earning a venomous glare from our sister. It doesn't matter whose idea it was. You all agreed. And honestly, it's the most honest you've been with me in years. Mom had recovered some of her composure. Sweetheart, we can work this out. We're family. Families fight, they have misunderstandings, but at the end of the day, blood is thicker than water. That's not even the correct quotation, I said. The full proverb is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It actually means the opposite of how you've always used it. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. I stood up, gathering the documents back into the red folder. You have 2 options. Option 1. You sign the repayment agreements. You commit to family therapy. You take responsibility for your actions. We establish healthy boundaries moving forward. I tucked the folder into my bag. Option 2. I file lawsuits against each of you for financial recovery. I provide evidence of fraud where applicable. I pursue this legally to the fullest extent possible. You would see your own family? Mom gasped. According to Stephanie, I don't have a family anymore. I lifted my bag onto my shoulder. You have until New Year's Day to decide. My lawyer will be in touch with the paperwork. Stephanie lunged to her feet. You self-righteous, calculating bitch. You think you're so much better than us? At least we know how to live. All you know is work and money. That's where you're wrong, Stephanie, I replied calmly. I know a lot about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. I've spent 7 years demonstrating those qualities. What I've finally learned is that they need to be reciprocal to be meaningful. I turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The gifts I gave you today? They're paid for. No strings attached. Consider them a parting gesture and a reminder of what genuine generosity looks like. As I walked to the door, Drew called after me. Amelia, wait. Can't we just talk about this? I turned back one last time, taking in the scene, the beautiful Christmas decorations, the expensive gifts, the faces of the people who had been the center of my world for so long. We're done talking, I said quietly. The red folder has said everything that needs to be said. The door closed behind me with a soft click, final as a period at the end of a very long sentence. I didn't make it to my car before the front door flew open behind me. Stephanie stormed out, still in her slippers, her face flushed with anger. You can't just drop a bomb like that and walk away, she shouted, her breath clouding in the cold air. I turned to face her, snow crunching beneath my boots. I didn't drop a bomb, Stephanie. I presented evidence. There's a difference. Drew emerged next, followed by Mom, and finally Jack, who looked shell-shocked. They formed a small, defensive cluster on the front porch, united, as always, against the outside threat. Even when that threat was the person who had kept them financially afloat for years. Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally, Drew said, assuming the mediator role he occasionally adopted when it suited him. Come back inside, Amelia. It's freezing out here. I'm not interested in another discussion where you gaslight me and manipulate my emotions, I replied. I've said what I needed to say. The documentation speaks for itself. This is about money, Mom said, her voice taking on the wounded quality she'd perfected over the years. It's always been about money with you. Keeping score, tracking every penny. This isn't about money, I interrupted. It's about respect, appreciation, honesty. Things that have been noticeably absent from our relationship. So you're willing to destroy your family over some misunderstandings? Stephanie demanded. You destroyed this family, I said quietly. Each time you took advantage. Each time you lied about needing help. Each time you discussed me with contempt while spending my money. And finally, today, when you explicitly stated I was no longer part of the family. Mom stepped forward, switching tactics. Sweetheart, we were emotional. We didn't mean those things. You know how Stephanie gets carried away. Don't blame this on me, Stephanie snapped. You agreed with everything I said. Because you manipulated the situation, as usual, Mom retorted, momentarily forgetting her performance as the wounded matriarch. As they bickered, Jack approached me separately, his expression troubled. Amelia, I had no idea about the gambling. About any of this, really. His voice dropped lower. Karen always handled the finances. She told me your help was occasional, for emergencies. And you never questioned it? I asked. The renovations, the vacations, the new furniture, all on a teacher's pension and your sporadic employment? He looked genuinely ashamed. I didn't want to know, I guess. It was easier not to ask questions. Willful ignorance is still a choice, Jack. Our conversation was interrupted by Drew, who had broken away from Mom and Stephanie's escalating argument. Look, about the BMW. He began. I don't care about the car, Drew. I care that you lied to me. That you never had any intention of building that business or repaying that loan. I was going to, he insisted. Eventually. Things just got complicated. Things got comfortable, I corrected him. It was easier to take than to earn. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you held a job for more than 3 months? When have you ever followed through on anything? Not everyone can be perfect like you, he muttered, falling back on the familiar accusation. I'm not perfect. I'm responsible. There's a difference. Our conversation was cut short by Stephanie's raised voice. This is ridiculous. She can't actually sue us. We're family. According to my lawyer, I have an excellent case, I called over to her. Particularly given the recorded conversations and documented pattern of deception. Mom finally broke down, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I have a problem, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. The gambling. It started after the divorce. Just small amounts at first. It made me feel something besides failure and abandonment. Mom. Stephanie began, but Mom waved her off. No, it's time for the truth. I've been lying to all of you. The money Amelia gave us, a lot of it went to the casinos. I kept thinking I'd win it back, pay her back, fix everything. She looked at me, genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time. I never meant for it to go this far. But you let it, I said, not unkindly. You had countless opportunities to ask for real help, to be honest about what was happening. I was ashamed, she whispered. And then it just became easier to keep taking. To pretend everything was fine. Stephanie was staring at Mom with dawning horror. The second mortgage on the house. That wasn't for repairs, was it? Mom shook her head, unable to speak. A heavy silence fell over the group, broken only by the distant sound of children laughing in a neighboring yard. The perfect family Christmas we'd always pretended to have was finally, irrevocably shattered. What happens now? Drew finally asked. Like I said, you have options. I withdrew 5 sealed envelopes from my bag. These letters outline my terms for moving forward. Read them carefully. They include the repayment schedules, requirements for therapy, both individual and family, and my conditions for maintaining any relationship with each of you. I handed them out one by one. These are non-negotiable. You either commit to making amends and changing the dynamic completely, or we handle this through the legal system. And if we agree to your terms? Stephanie asked, turning the envelope over in her hands. Then we try to rebuild something healthier. Something based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. And if we can't afford to repay everything? Drew asked. The schedule takes your income into account. It's fair. There are also provisions for community service and other forms of restitution. I looked at each of them in turn. This isn't about getting every dollar back. It's about accountability. What about the family therapy part? Mom asked quietly. That's actually the most important condition, I told her. Money can be replaced. Trust is harder to rebuild. They stood on the porch, holding their letters, suddenly looking smaller and less formidable than they had just hours before. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and we all felt it. I never wanted this, I said, my voice softening slightly. I wanted to be part of a family that loved and respected each other. That supported each other through genuine hardships. That celebrated each other's successes instead of exploiting them. We do love you, Drew said quietly. Love without respect isn't love, I replied. It's just another form of use. I turned to go, then paused one final time. 3 months. No contact while you consider your options and begin the work outlined in those letters. After that, we'll reassess based on your actions, not your promises. As I drove away, I watched them in my rearview mirror, still standing on the porch, envelopes in hand, the perfect family portrait finally revealing its true image. I felt a complex mixture of grief, relief, and something else I couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't until I was halfway home that I recognized it: freedom. For the first time in 7 years, I was free from the crushing weight of impossible expectations and endless obligations. Free to build my own life on my own terms. Whatever happened next, whether they chose accountability or continued denial, I had reclaimed my agency. The red folder had done its work. And that, I realized, was the greatest Christmas gift I could have given myself. 6 months after that fateful Christmas morning, I sat in Dr. Simmons' office for our bi-weekly therapy session. The cherry blossoms outside her window had come and gone, and summer was settling over Boston with its characteristic humidity. How are you feeling about the family meeting tomorrow? She asked, noting my fidgeting hands. Nervous, I admitted. It's been 3 months since our last structured interaction. A lot has changed. Indeed it has, she agreed. Let's talk through your boundaries again. The aftermath of my Christmas confrontation had unfolded in unexpected ways. Initially, there had been anger, furious texts and voicemails demanding I retract my ridiculous claims and threats. Then came the bargaining, offers to repay small amounts if I would drop the legal proceedings, attempts to negotiate the therapy requirements. Finally, when my lawyer made it clear I was serious, acceptance began to take root. Mom was the first to truly commit to change. 3 weeks after Christmas, she had enrolled in a gambling addiction program and begun attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. The initial evaluation had revealed the full extent of her problem: over $200,000 lost in the past 5 years, multiple secret credit cards, and 2 previously undisclosed loans against the house. It was her rock bottom, I told Dr. Simmons. When Jack finally learned everything, he gave her an ultimatum: get help or he would leave. And How has her recovery been progressing? 6 months sober from gambling. She's working with a financial counselor in addition to her addiction specialist. She's even taken a full-time teaching position again to help with the repayment plan. The financial resolution had been complex but necessary. Under my lawyer's guidance, we had established legally binding repayment agreements with each family member. Mom and Jack had sold their vacation timeshare and second car. Drew had finally sold the BMW. Stephanie and Greg had reluctantly put their main property on the market. And your brother? You mentioned some positive developments there. I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. Drew completed that vocational training program. He's been working as an IT support specialist for 3 months now, his longest continuous employment since college. That must be gratifying to see. It is. He's different somehow, more grounded. He told me last week that the structure and accountability have been good for him. That he actually feels proud of himself for the first time in years. Not all the changes had been positive. Stephanie had complied with the financial terms but remained angry and resistant to the therapeutic process. She attended the required family sessions but participated minimally, treating them as an ordeal to be endured rather than an opportunity for growth. And your relationship with Stephanie? I sighed. Still strained. She sees me as the villain in all this. The one who destroyed the family dynamic instead of the one who exposed it. That's not uncommon in these situations. Often the person who breaks the pattern of dysfunction becomes the target of resentment. I know. I'm trying to accept that we may never have the relationship I once hoped for. Outside of my complicated family healing, my personal life had flourished in unexpected ways. Freed from the financial burden of supporting multiple households, I had finally purchased my own condo, a sunny 2-bedroom in Cambridge with a small balcony perfect for the container garden I'd always wanted to cultivate. I joined a book club and a hiking group, building friendships with people who expected nothing from me but my company and conversation. I'd even begun dating Michael, a kind and thoughtful architect I'd met at a fundraiser for the financial literacy program where I'd started volunteering. You've created quite a life for yourself these past 6 months, Dr. Simmons observed. It feels like my life, I replied. For the first time, it actually feels like mine. The family therapy sessions, facilitated by Dr. Carter, had been challenging but illuminating. We had mapped the patterns of our dysfunction, examined the roles we had each played, and begun the painful process of establishing healthier ways of relating to one another. I never realized how much I'd been shaped by Dad's abandonment, I explained. How I'd tried to fill that hole by making myself indispensable to everyone else. How I'd equated financial support with love because I didn't know how else to express it. And they didn't know how else to receive it, Dr. Simmons added. Systems develop to serve a purpose, even if that purpose ultimately becomes destructive. The legal aspect of our situation had been resolved more smoothly than I'd anticipated. Once my family realized I was serious about pursuing legal action if necessary, they had cooperated with the structured repayment plan. Monthly payments came consistently, if not always cheerfully. The total amount would never equal what I'd given over the years, but the acknowledgement of the debt was, in many ways, more important than the money itself. Tomorrow's meeting will be different, I said, thinking aloud. It's the first time we'll be gathering informally since Christmas. No lawyers, no therapists, just family having dinner together. And you've established clear boundaries for the interaction? Yes. Neutral location, a restaurant downtown. Tower time limit. No discussion of financial matters outside the established agreements. Everyone is responsible for their own transportation and expenses. Dr. Simmons nodded approvingly. And your internal boundaries? What will you do if old patterns begin to emerge? I'll name the behavior directly. If it continues, I'll excuse myself. I took a deep breath. And I remember that their behavior reflects on them, not on me. That I'm not responsible for fixing their problems or managing their emotions. Excellent. You've come so far, Amelia. Indeed, The journey of the past 6 months had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. I had learned to prioritize my own well-being without guilt, to recognize manipulation in its many subtle forms, to understand that true generosity came from choice, not obligation. Most importantly, I had expanded my definition of family. My closest support now included friends who celebrated my successes without envy, who offered help without keeping score, who loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide. That evening, I met my friend Tara for coffee. We had connected through the financial abuse support group I joined in January, both of us navigating the complicated terrain of family estrangement and reconciliation. Nervous about tomorrow? She asked as we claimed a corner table at our favorite cafe. Terrified, I admitted. What if it all falls apart again? What if they haven't really changed? Then you'll handle it, she said simply. The difference is, now you know you can walk away if you need to. You're not trapped anymore. Her words stayed with me as I prepared for bed that night. The red folder that had once contained all my documentation now held something different. Journal entries chronicling my healing journey, positive affirmations for difficult days, photos of my new life and the people who enriched it. I ran my fingers over the glossy cardboard, remembering how it had felt to place it beneath the Christmas tree 6 months ago. The folder had served its purpose, transforming from an archive of exploitation to a testament of growth. My first Christmas after the confrontation would look very different from any holiday I'd known before. Whether tomorrow's dinner led to deeper healing or confirmed that some distances couldn't be bridged, I would celebrate the season on my own terms. Perhaps with Michael and the friends who had become my chosen family. Perhaps in the peaceful solitude of my new home. Perhaps even with some members of my biological family if our healing continued. The path forward remained uncertain, but for the first time in my adult life, that uncertainty felt like freedom rather than fear. I had learned that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, but necessary. That boundaries weren't walls, but vital definitions of where I ended and others began. That love without respect was just another form of use. Most importantly, I had discovered that the greatest gift I could give myself was the courage to reveal the truth, whatever the consequences. The red folder had been just the beginning. The real story was what happened after, the painful, beautiful process of rebuilding a life based on authenticity rather than obligation. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt gratitude wash over me, not for what I had lost, but for what I had found. Myself, my voice, my boundaries, my worth. The red folder had changed everything, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of strength and personal growth. Share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to put themselves first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't measured by what you give to others, but by how you honor yourself.